let's go into a couple of movies that came out over Christmas. I was initially going to add The Aeronauts onto this also, but I think we're going to push it again to a couple of weeks from now when we're talking about 1917 and Just Mercy, when we kind of finish out 2019. But this will be the last movie video of the year, so but there's still going to be that one more to kind of finish off 2019 in a couple of weeks. So until then, let's go into these two and start with Uncut Gems, which is there's so many movies that are coming out in like this last part of the year that are getting such insane reactions and just like instantaneous followings and people just going absolutely nuts. And you would think these movies would suffer from that, like there would be way too much hype to live up to. Stuff like Parasite getting that kind of hype practically all year, and somehow living up to it, and this falls right into that also. And I wasn't quite sure how I was going to feel because this is the next movie from the Safdie brothers, who kind of first got indie acclaim with Daddy Longlegs, and they did Heaven Knows What. And Heaven Knows What was a movie that I hated, and then they ended up making Good Time, and that's when they really got, some really positive attention, and people just flocked to that movie, and still to this day, like, absolutely sing its praises. And while I really like Good Time and admire, like, the filmmaking behind it and their style, and how quickly they're, like, really bursting on the scene with their own way of doing things, like, you can identify one of their movies immediately, mainly by the knot in your stomach. I didn't take to it as much as everybody else did. It was more like an admiration thing than a movie that I genuinely took to. But this one, on the other hand, I feel differently about because one of the things, obviously, that's mainly making everybody look towards it is Sandler and his performance and how not necessarily out of nowhere the performance is, because we've known for a while that he can do drama incredibly, whether it be Punch Drunk Love or the Meyerowitz stories or whatever. Even some genuine moments in his comedies, like in Big Daddy, he has a lot of like genuinely emotional scenes. But obviously, the thing about that though is we know that he does drama and that he can do drama very well. But this is just kind of just altogether something else entirely. And it would be easy to say, like, he sort of carries the movie, like the movie is what it is because of him. And while he is absolutely the center of this, and is just like the fire underneath this movie that keeps it constantly going, I think it also helps a lot, both just the general feel, but also his performance, that the entire movie itself is just as amazing. But looking just at him though, there is something about like when you kind of compare a person, when you see like sometimes it can be a hindrance to see somebody in like a lot of interviews or a lot of press leading up to a movie, especially if it's a role they get lost in, because there's like that like anonymous feel that isn't there with actors if they do enough press. And obviously he's having to do like all the Q&As and all the talk shows, being asked the same questions about the same anecdotes over and over again. And even before that, when you watch like interviews with him, you get this idea that Sandler is like, he's extremely humble. Like you can see his sort of, there's an extreme discomfort in him whenever he's praised to his face, where like it just, like it's that way for a lot of people, but you really just, it's hard to just kind of take that in. You don't really know how to, and he's one of those people, despite the kind of career that he's had. And not to mention that he is absolutely out of this world, filthy fucking rich. But you would if you didn't know who he was and you just saw him, you would never guess. He wears like t-shirts and shorts to talk shows, and they never, that kind of stuff never comes up. You would just never see this guy something like flaunting the fact that he's like incredibly rich off his ass. And this character is the complete opposite of everything I just said. And it's even to the point where you can be like me and grow up with, like, go your entire life knowing who Adam Sandler is, and it's still like when I see him do these interviews. I've watched a couple more after I saw the movie, and I cannot see this character in there at all, nor can I see him in the character. Like, both ways it works. These are like two entirely different people in just this really insane way, and it's really just kind of the way the movie pulls you in general, where everything like you obviously hear and you expect that with the Safdie Brothers movies, that it's just incredibly frantic, like nonstop the whole time, and there's all this anxiety and all this stuff. But the way they throw it in right away, where we're immediately thrown into his character when he's walking down the sidewalk on the phone, and we immediately think we've got the gist of the guy just by looking at him in this one opening scene. And then as it goes on, he is the kind of person we expect him to be, but there's all kinds of other levels here. Like, there might be more to him on a human level that we're not looking at, or he may or he may be even worse than he looks, in regards to the more imperfect parts of his personality, and just the decisions that he makes and all that stuff. His general lifestyle, his entire life is like a ticking time bomb that's just gonna go off in a number of ways with all the different people he interacts with and all the different trouble he finds himself in, and the fact that if he finds himself in a hole, the only way he feels he can get himself out is it's almost like he's addicted to digging his hole even further, and like that's just what gives him life. It's almost like getting into more trouble is what like fuels him, it seems, regardless of how broken down it inevitably makes him. But there's one moment at the very beginning that I feel like just sets the tone for everything, and it's like so sudden and so jarring. It's like when I saw it, like immediately it was like, oh, that's it. Like, the movie felt weird. Like, well, that's just an unnatural thing to happen. But then the more the movie went on, and when I thought back to it, it was like, no, it's perfect that something that feels so unnatural happens at the very beginning. And the act I'm referring to is Sandler being behind the counter, and there are these two dudes there, big dudes and threatening dudes, that are saying they want the money that they're supposed to get from him. And when he offers them water, the dude just slaps him in the face hard. And this is a dude he met 10 seconds ago. And not only that, this is in a room full of people that also have never met this guy before. And it's like, so immediately that says this is the kind of movie that's going to be populated with characters that just do not give a shit about their surroundings or what, something normal people would do. Like, it gives you the idea that something drastic can happen, like, anywhere, and that nobody cares, who's around to see whatever it is they're going to do. And the fact that that's the kind of feeling you get from the opening scene pretty much sets the vibe for the next 2 hours and 15 minutes, which does not in any way feel like 2 hours and 15 minutes at all. And that's only fueled by watching Sandler just turn into this character that is like, there's just such a thirst and a hunger for, I'm not even entirely sure if the character knows, because it's like, even when it seems like he's got what he needs, there's always that next thing, or there's always that next, like, road to go down, that's just going to be probably even worse than the last and get him in even more trouble than the last, because that's just his addictive personality. But Sandler makes that so believable, because this is the kind of character where it would be, it probably depends on your threshold for characters that are so clearly making all the wrong decisions, when it's like they could just do one thing, they could just say, no, I'm not going to do that, or no, I'll do this instead, or whatever, and just have one thing, like, on their plate to fix, but it's just, he just keeps going after it more and more, and it's like, if you have a low threshold for that, I can see this being a very frustrating movie for people, maybe not in the positive sense that you would get, because there definitely is a positive way to watch this movie frustrated, if you're that invested in it, which it is very easy to do. And it's like the way he just goes after seemingly like just any sort of score he can make, he will go after. There is also a moment at the very beginning, like right after this whole slap thing, when he gets a package, which is this like opal that's gonna find its way. We basically follow throughout the movie exactly wherever whoever is in possession of this thing is going to be driving where the story is going to go. And when he first sees this package, like when he sees it come through the door, there's just an immediate sort of like hunger inside him, and it's like it's inside of a fish, and we see him just sort of rip through this fish like he's a grizzly bear, but he also does it like very meticulously, like as if it's part of his job, like he's handling any other sort of, jewel or gem or whatever. And it's I don't know if I'm gonna say exactly what line he says when he first lays eyes on it, but it gives you the vibe of how his character feels about this stuff for sure. Um, and from then on, it's just how they build the scenes, which are just one scene after the other of things going terribly wrong and worse as they go. There is one particular moment, once again towards the beginning. It's all like there's so much stuff in the beginning alone. When Kevin Garnett first comes in, who's going to be like you initially think, a basketball player playing himself isn't going to be that crucial to this plot. I think even just for the sake of his placement, is the reason that the movie's set in 2012. I want to say, but this moment where like everybody is in the room, like Lakeith Stanfield is here, Kevin Garnett is here, all the people with him are there, all the people that work in the store are there. These guys that want the money are there, and everybody's packed into this little room, and everybody's talking all at once, and it's just this really aggressive atmosphere. And then there's this ongoing thing where Garnett keeps leaning on the glass, and Sandler has to keep frantically telling him, like, please, like, I respect you, but please don't lean on the glass. And the more he says that, the more likely it feels that something's going to happen to the glass. And this is all while all this other frantic energy is going on. And that's basically just warming you up. Like, there's a reason there's that much going on in the opening scene, because it's very much just setting the tone. And yeah, so there's a lot of characters coming in and out of this also, despite the fact that we're following Sandler pretty much nonstop. One of the more intriguing characters is his girlfriend, played by Juliette Fox, I think is her name, who I want to say this is her first movie. And what's interesting about her character is she seems to be set up like she's one thing. Like I was talking about the first time we see Howard, the Sandler character, where it's like, when you see him, you get a vibe from him, and you imagine the kind of character he probably is, until we kind of see some more layers come out, whether they're positive or negative, or more human, or makes us farther away from him, on a level of he's doing so many things that most rational people wouldn't. She's also kind of in that sense where when you see her, you assume she's like, just the girlfriend character, and she's the one that shows, like, just the general bad decisions he makes, because obviously he's also married to Idina Menzel, but this is very much his girlfriend also. Like, before the opening credits are even over, he, like, goes home to her, the girlfriend, for comfort when everything's stressful. But as that goes on, she does become, like, this really unpredictable character. And some people may think this is, like, flawed, but I think it really works with that unpredictability, where it's like, where we're not really, it's kind of hard to tell. I don't know if it's supposed to be clear or not, but it feels like it's intended that we're never quite sure how sincere her feelings are for him. Like, there are times when she seems very nonchalant about their relationship, and it's just whatever, he's just kind of a dude there. But then there are other moments where there does seem to be, like, genuine feeling there, and it's like you're never quite sure what side it's going to feel like when we see her again, and what side she's going to end up on, and if this is going to help or hurt him in the long run. And yeah, just this kind of whole, like, live wire thing going on with her side of the story in general And then there's the very interesting presence of Lakeith Stanfield, who is a very interesting character mainly because of his relationship with Sandler. Because there's what's really great about the two of them together is that depending on who, like, you can stop and take like one scene and then an entirely different scene that both of them are in, and you can see them from the other's perspective. Like if you see Sandler from Lakeith Stanfield's perspective, he's this guy that's. It seems like he's kind of in on it. Like he knows that Howard is like really full of shit and like just sort of cons everybody he runs into. Like anytime he meets somebody, his like it's almost like an instinct to just start conning them and try to get something out of them or to rope them into buying something that's not near as expensive as he's going to charge them for. And the Stanfield character is very much in the know of this. They're in business together, and he's already kind of getting screwed over in it. And so he just sort of becomes just sort of flippant about his interactions with Howard after that, pretty much throughout the movie. But then it's also believable, and it's the way Stanfield plays it makes this perfect, is you look at his character through Sandler's perspective, and he's like the most frustrating person in the world, like the most unreliable person in the world. And where it's like, he's that, like, I feel like most people have had that friend that just doesn't really give a shit about anything but what they're doing in the moment. And then whatever they do next may or may not have anything to do with what's going on. They're just going to follow their own path and not give a shit about anything around them. There's a point in time where they go to see The Weeknd perform, and of course being in 2012, this is before he's actually, like, the whole thing is he's building up to, oh, this guy's going to be big. And it's like, he has to convince Stanfield to go to that thing where The Weeknd is performing for a different reason, so they can meet up and do a whole business transaction or whatever. A very important thing involving this opal that really needs to be done. And then when they get there, not only is Stanfield not even remotely interested in the opal thing, but he's like, man, I'm here to see The Weeknd. And it's like, motherfucker, you had to be convinced to come here. And now it's suddenly all you care about when we have more important things to do. And he's that guy, and he plays that so perfectly. But once again, you can see it from both their perspectives. Where if you're looking at one through the other's eyes, they're both, like, you just want to throttle them. And I think that's really perfect also, that you can see those two different perspectives. And that they both come through is just great. And then you've got another really interesting character here, whose casting I was very excited about. One of the main people that Sandler owes money to is a character played by Eric Bogosian from Talk Radio. And I don't know that I want to say too much, but I found it very interesting, and I think Bogosian's casting has a lot to do with why this works so well. Like, it is absolutely perfect casting, because when it starts off and we see the first scene of him and Sandler in the car, and he's saying, you know, like, because those guys, the guy that slapped him at the beginning, were hired by him. And so they come off like his bodyguards, and he comes off in this scene in the car the first time we meet him like he's some sort of crime boss. And that's the kind of general vibe that you get, and the back and forth that they have. And there's clearly a sort of, what seems to be an intimidation in this scene, especially since they're separated by Bogosian being in the front seat and Sandler being in the back seat with the threatening guys. But then as it unravels, it seems more that Bogosian's character is a Jerry Lundegaard type, William H. Macy in Fargo. And I thought that was just a really interesting sort of, like, as things are revealed about this character, and it's like, given the context, how different who a person is can change, or how they seem, how they come off, and that's just, yeah, so all the stuff with those characters like that. And then there's stuff with, like, there's a lot of people in the movie. It sort of feels like almost like a Spike Lee movie in this sense, where it's like a lot of the just sort of background actors there, the characters just sort of come in and out. I think the bodyguard guys, too, are like non-actors. Like, they're people that the Savage just kind of saw and just kind of put them in here, and like, it just makes everything feel so much more natural and real. And this is the kind of movie where, with a character as erratic as Sandler's, the more grounded it feels, that's where a lot of the anxiety is going to come from. where it doesn't feel too outlandish. It feels like whatever this stuff is going to have real consequences. And it's in the way some of these characters come in and out. Also, just sort of like they always enter at just the wrong time, and it's yeah, and it's usually something that's totally irrelevant to the scene that they're in now, and it's you can just feel the world around Sandler just sort of closing in, and it's yeah, and it's sometimes they just throw in people here that it's like it's just this weird little detail where they're in his apartment building, and he's like, hey, the guy from Good Times is my neighbor, and we're gonna ask him if you can use his bathroom. And it's like, oh, okay, so it's like that's an interesting little thing to say. And then, sure enough, he opens the door, and John Amos is actually there. And it's stuff like that. Just sort of adds to the whole world in general, and just like there's little unexpected touches that really work also. And then there's stuff that they just build up to. Like it's not even always stuff that's like right in the moment. Like there's a big auction that this oval's going to go through that Sandler keeps building up through the entire movie, and you can kind of get a sense that like the closer and closer we get to that, the more it's like because there's always these little individual like goal points we need to get to, and it's like whether Sandler will come out on top of that or not. Always remains to be seen, but then there's also like the long-term goal that's also waiting. So it's like these little individual things that are getting us to a particular moment until that ends up taking us somewhere else also. Like the auction's not even the climax of the movie. That's how much is up this movie's sleeve. And it could feel like, especially when we get to the auction, where it's like the trouble that he gets in, and the way he's always, just making things worse. He basically is going in circles. Like, through the whole movie, he's just going in circles. Like, he thinks he's figured it out, then he hasn't, and then tries to fix it by doing exactly the wrong thing he did before to get it to the mess in the first place, and it just keeps happening. And that, in another movie, could probably have a sort of redundancy to it, if it wasn't handled well. But with the way the Safdies handle this, there is, like, the more it goes in circles and the more we know it's probably going to go bad for him again, the more it ramps up because we know the worse the consequences will build, the more he fucks up. And it's like with those looming consequences, it's like, if he can just... We're frustrated that he keeps doing that, but somehow we still want him to find the ultimate finish line by the time all of this has happened. Like, we want there to eventually be a stopping point that he can find. And it's like the fact that he can make this character so frustrating in that sense, but we still want that. Now, you could say you could want that for his character, but you could also say you want it just because you want the tension to be over. But it works. But he does get, like... There is a point in time when you're just kind of... the tension is just building and building and building, and eventually that tension's going to reach a breaking point. But there's also a nice balance to that, because there's also, like... There is one moment when he finally reaches an emotional breaking point that also feels like something that's sort of pays off. And it's one of those things where it's like, you can almost feel like there's a slight relief in tension. But with this movie, reliefs and tension are going to be very short-lived until we're back into the mess all over again. And that's kind of just the beauty of the movie in general. So that's basically just the movie. In a nutshell, and that you can make a movie like this, especially at 2 hours and 15 minutes, and not run out of gas is just incredible. And you can see where I talk about like the structure and the different side characters and all that. Sandler is absolutely the heart of this thing, and would be running away with award season in another year. It's a fucking shame that he's in such a stacked year, but. Yeah, it's one of the best performances of the year for sure, and that's it's one of the best in probably the last few years at least. One of the best, and yeah. So, but it doesn't necessarily. It's not by any means just an actor's big tour de force performance kind of carrying a movie. It's all working as one thing. He's just like the biggest cog in it. But this is a really well-oiled machine where everything is doing its job and getting us to all these points, whether we want to get there or not, or see what's around the next corner or not. But once again, that's just all the beauty of the execution of this thing. So, yes, that hype is definitely earned. So, speaking of a lot of hype, let's go into Little Women. Greta Gerwig's interpretation of the movie we've seen, the book that we've seen made into many, many movies over time. There was the 1933 one with Katharine Hepburn. I think there were a couple from the silent era. There was the 1949 one with June Allison, the one where Elizabeth Taylor played Amy, which is an underrated version. There was the modernized one they did recently, which I didn't even bother to see, and I heard terrible things about. I think there was a mini-series recently. The one that I know the best and grew up on is the 1994 one, the Gillian Armstrong one with Winona Ryder. And this one was going to be hard to top, but I didn't really go into this thinking about, can it top that one? Because I had heard that Gerwig's approach was very different. Like, the way she was kind of focusing more on one side of the story than the other, and using a fractured timeline to do that, where it's like we start off in like kind of the second half of the story, and then it goes back to the beginning of the first half, and then we do that until we reach a point, and the way those moments line up emotionally and like thematically, when she goes back and forth from the present to back, there's like a 7-year gap. Which I've heard, apparently there's complaints that some people find the time jumps confusing. Because I think there's only one time card that I remember that establishes the first one, when it says this was 7 years earlier, and then you just know that going back. It doesn't have to tell you every time. And I had heard that some people weren't entirely sure when the time jumps were happening, but there's clear visual cues, whether it be like the way it looks, and like even like the use of color seemed to be used in there to show you where you could tell. And in the parts that take place in the second half of the story feel much more somber, and the first half feels a lot more like light, and everything's like together and more familial and all that. So there's it's not too hard to put together if you're like really paying attention. And sometimes that's like at first I wasn't sure, because I was like, I get it that this is a story that's been told so many times, and you need to find some way to do it freshly, and it's like, is this just kind of a gimmick to say like, oh, technically we did something different, we're doing a back and forth time thing. But she does find ways to make that to where, like, when we get sort of like, there's many cases where they do one sort of emotional payoff on one side, but then they do another emotional payoff like right after that for the second part of the story. But in like, while one is like a happy payoff, they'll immediately slap you in the face with a tragic one and go back and forth with that. Which sounds like manipulative in the worst way, but it does feel, it feels very more or less natural when they go back and forth. There is one case where it does seem like it's like the biggest use of this, where one is like, they fake you out and everything's happy, and then the second one sets up the same way, but it's not a fake out anymore. And it's one of those things where you can appreciate it because what happens doesn't seem that practical, like the event. But as far as like, for effect, which is the more you want to do this, because the whole thing of how, especially in the first half, the whole story just kind of has like that, the movie adaptations have a real storybook quality to them, especially the 94 one. Which the 94 one I still think is the most effective one, even after this one, but I know a lot of people are really taking to this one. A lot of people, particularly fans of the book, are calling this one the best adaptation yet. But we'll get a little more into that stuff. Obviously, this is Gerwig's second movie as a writer-director after Lady Bird, and a lot of her cast is coming back also, with Saoirse Ronan and Timothée Chalamet's playing Laurie, and the great presence of Tracy Letts, who isn't here long, but is just as effective as he usually is, and is a great kind of bookend to the movie, where it's the whole idea of Joe trying to sell this sort of a story that's more or less a memoir, but getting the notes about how you can't do this thing, you've got to end it in the the cliche way, or we won't accept it, because that's what people want to see, especially after the Civil War and all that. And so there's a lot of playing around with the stuff like that, and the sort of like the dated values, and the way she sort of changes that up, and has the whole underlying theme of Jo trying to break out and do her own thing, but it's like, will she or will she not fall into the traps of, what's expected of her, and women in general in that time period. And Ronan obviously carries it pretty well, but whilst adaptations like the '94 one really get to, like, it kind of feels like it's Ryder at the center of it. Obviously Jo is at the center of the story, but the way that it feels like we get a lot more of the individual characters in this one, where we get Florence Pugh obviously gets to do her scene stealing thing with Amy, and she's getting a great reaction. I'm still betting that she gets an Oscar nomination for Ronan and Florence Pugh, but specifically Florence Pugh. As far as me personally, I do think that she seemed a little over the top, and I get going that route for the kind of character that Amy is, but it still felt like a pretty stark contrast in kind of a distracting way with the other characters. But she still handles this really well, the back and forth of like, she'll make you really, really despise her, and she'll do something unforgivable, but then she'll do something, or have something happen to her that makes you like pity her, and it's the back and forth thing, the way you would with an actual family member, where you can like just absolutely hate them 1 minute, but then at the end of the day, you know how you really feel about them, and it's the farthest from that. So she captures that really well also. I can see it being a bit jarring if she's like, like in the '94 one, when they cast Kirsten Dunst as her younger, and then Samantha Mathis in the later scenes. It's just Pugh throughout the movie, and it's like there's some times where she seems too young when she should seem older, and then there's times where she seems older when she should feel younger, and it's but for the most part, she'll be one of the standouts of the movie. Like she'll be the character people talk about a lot as they go out of this. And then there's also Eliza Scanlon, I believe is her name, who hasn't done a whole lot. I think she was in that Sharp Objects miniseries, but apart from that, I don't think I'm familiar with her. Who is Beth, and she gets a lot more to do here. Maybe not necessarily as far as acting goes, like as far as showy scenes go, but the character herself, where she has these interactions with Mr. Lawrence, who's played by Chris Cooper brilliantly in this one. And the relationship between them is probably the thing that I felt the most personally throughout the movie. When he says that she reminds him of his daughter, and he buys her a piano, and he considers her the quiet one of the group, so he has this appreciation for her. And there's a moment where he really shines, where he is basically in another room just listening to her, and we can see his emotional reaction to this, and that relationship to me is probably the strongest aspect of the movie to me. So that works great. And then there is Emma Watson as Meg, and Meg isn't like the showiest part, but there's like there's something very understated to where it can be an incredible role for an actress that can handle understated. And I don't know if this is a controversial opinion or not, but I'm just not drawn to Emma Watson really at all. Like I really don't. I just don't think there's just something so. She doesn't feel natural in most of her parts to me. It always feels like she's in the wrong place at the wrong time, trying to be convincing, and it never quite works. And there are times where she gets really close, but still it's just like... Because I know it was supposed to be Emma Stone, but then she was doing like press for The Favourite or something, or the awards run for The Favourite or something. And I could possibly see her, but I still think you need to go even more understated. I'm trying to think off the cuff of an actress that could really kill this, but I like nowadays, um, but I don't know because with Watson, you kind of get the sense that there's not a lot to do with the role, but there is. Like I said, it's just very understated, and I really don't think like you could. It's I don't know if this sounds like cruel, but it's like you can tell Watson was a replacement for somebody else, and I just never really felt much of that. I can pinpoint the scenes where it's like it's a really strong moment for the character, but through Watson, I don't think it gets there. But yeah, so but then you have Timothée Chalamet as Laurie, who's another I would consider probably high point of the movie, and what I really like about him is the way he handles the sort of ambiguity where you because we know how he feels about Joe for sure, but then there is the second part of his story with Amy, and it's the whole question of are his feelings for Amy sincere, and you go back and forth with that, but then after a while, I kind of just accepted that it was like I just kind of accepted it as an ambiguous thing because the way Chalamet was playing it seems like the idea was for there to not be a definitive answer to that, but it is always clear at the end of the day that Joe will be the one that got away. So it almost feels irrelevant, I guess, whether the feelings for Amy are there or not, especially with the themes of them feeling like they have to land on somebody and end up there, whether it's settling or not, which is a whole dialogue that he and Amy have at some point. And yeah, and then like we were saying, the way Gerwig plays with that stuff makes it just when you think it's like, oh, is this going down that trope path? But then you realize that overall the adaptation is smarter than that. And then the look of it kind of says a lot about it too, where it does feel very like I was saying. The thing that I especially love about the Gillian Armstrong version is just how much it feels like. I don't know, as cheesy as it is, watching that movie feels like you're physically reading a book by a fireplace, basically. And I don't know that this one gets there to the extent that that one did, to the effect that that one did. But there's still a certain look to the movie that really stands out. There's the great scene, the big scene between Joe and Laurie when they're in like the field. That's really well done. There's the way the camera moves in this is really nice and fluid also. And then there's the scene when they're towards the beginning when they're like dancing outside the windows of the party and stuff like that. Works really nicely and gives it that feel. But overall, when we get to the end and it does go more into the themes and it's like, it's and I get what she's going for, but at the same time it feels a bit on the nose that this movie of all movies ends up going meta, where it's like because here's the thing is I was thinking about how, like, you know, it's basically addressing the dated values and stuff like that and trying to go against it while also telling the story. And the way she's talking to Tracy Letts and addressing this, it's like, oh, they're being, you know, super meta about, you know, the fact that this is a 2019 movie trying to figure out its ending given the way the story ends, but also there's the whole other layer to that this was basically what Louisa May Alcott went through making the book herself, and like basically her story is like interjected into it also, and so it's like I do think there's a really good idea here, but like I said, the more you think about it, just the more like way on the nose it feels, and a little way too direct, to the point that it like you're waiting any second for Rona to just flat out break the fourth wall. And it's... But yeah, I get the idea behind it, and that's strong, so it is there. So with all that said, with all that positivity out there, the problem I had here was something I was struggling to try to put into words, and I still don't know that I've gotten there. But... And I don't know if it's... that I have trouble connecting with Gerwig as a filmmaker, because it was kind of, it felt distant to me when Lady Bird got the reaction that it did, where people went absolutely insane like they had never seen a coming of age movie before, And I felt like I just didn't get it or something. And this also, where I can acknowledge, like, how well the performances work and how well they work together, and what's smart about the adaptation and the fractured timeline, and the way it's shot, the way it looks, and everything, the relationships, all that stuff. Um, but as I was watching it, I just really didn't feel much of anything at all. I felt so indifferent the entire 2 hours and 15 minutes. Um, and I don't know how much that has to do with, like, knowing the story so well at this point and knowing the different story beats, even if, the way they're placed is different this time and gives them a slightly different effect and punch when they happen. But you still know the story and you still know the beats. So I don't know if that is mainly the reason, because, like, I didn't have any, like, looking at that stuff and knowing that that works, on, like, a filmmaking standpoint, is, like, I say, yes, that is, that is competent. That is something, that is a way to adapt the story that works. But trying to go beyond just appreciating it on a technical level, I feel like I'm forcing myself. Like, I'm just not having that natural reaction to it. Yeah. Just like, I just don't feel it. So I don't know. Like I said, I don't know if I just don't connect with Gerwig, or if it's knowing the story beats or what. But yeah, because there's also, a certain touch that Gerwig has that I do like. Because I do really like Lady Bird, even if I didn't react to it the way most did. And I think one thing that really stands out and made her a strong, person to make this movie, strong candidate to make this movie, is her sensitivity towards her characters, no matter how, like, because she seemed like, after Lady Bird in this, it's like Gerwig doesn't believe in throwaway characters, which is a trait I really love. Where you feel like every, even the smallest character in Lady Bird, got some big moment, and the same can be said here. And the way we really get a glimpse into each one. And they each one has, like, their big moment, and many times multiple big moments. And none of them feel throwaway or like a character type. And like I said, that goes a long way, and that's, I think, a large reason why people are having such an insanely visceral reaction to this. But I just think it's so weird that I can acknowledge all this stuff and what works about it while feeling practically nothing. And maybe that's a me flaw. Maybe Gerwig has nothing to do with this. I don't know. But that was basically my reaction to this movie. So that's really all I can say. And my apologies if that's underwhelming. I know how you feel. So, yeah, so I have no idea what's going to be going on. I don't know if I'm going to see The Garage right away or not. I don't know why we need that, but but it's going to be there. And then I was talking about on the 10th, we'll have Just Mercy in 1917, and we'll finish up this whole thing. This will go right into more award stuff and all that. So I guess once this year finishes out in the next few days, then we'll see where we end up. But until then, I think we're done here.